Hello, everyone, and welcome back to block party number 48. We are now 3.5 hours into El Puente, the Spanish English section of El Puente. And it was so nice, really, really nice. Because um, for those of you who know Latin American culture, have experienced it, it is it's a whole other world. And it was so nice to really be in this Latin space, or really El Puente space, because it's both Latin America and the English speaking world um, coming together and sharing. And but the Latin flavor that we've now infused in El Puente, it really brings me back, and it fills me with hope and warm feelings, because Latin culture has this warmth and this togetherness. And the way I've described it in the last few days as we've been preparing for El Puente, in Latin American culture, in Latin culture, it's not okay that you don't get it, right? There's in American culture, for me as a Hispanic American, so I kind of bridge both worlds. One of the things I don't like about American culture is that, if somebody disagrees with us or doesn't get something, it's too easy to say, oh, okay, well, I don't care. You go off on your way and I'll go off on mine, and that's cool, peace out. But in Latin American culture, if we feel passionate about something, we want to share that. And if it doesn't communicate on the first try, we go deeper, we keep at it in a very gentle, loving way. It's like really deep sharing, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's something that our world really needs.
Mhm.
It's not okay that huge chunks of the world just don't get it about the environment or about saving Mother Earth, saving the Amazon, cooling the planet. It's really not okay that, you know, the majority of the planet or half the planet doesn't get it. We all have to get it. And this is something beautiful about Latin American culture. And there's also something very unique. Where else in the world do you have um, multiple countries on two continents, right? Practically a whole hemisphere, right? That the Americas span, where not only is the language in common, Spanish, but the culture is mostly in common, more in common than not. Yes, Mexican culture, Venezuelan culture, Colombian culture, Argentina culture, there's variations, but it's variations on a common theme or a common foundation, right?
Mm.
And so there's so much commonality bringing us together. And I believe the warm Latin culture of togetherness and the matriarchal culture is something that is a huge contribution to American culture and Canadian culture, Scottish culture, the English speaking world, right? And I think bringing together, bridging these two provide sort of a foundational bridge that we can then imagine just going creative visually, flying buttresses from the Chinese speaking world, Swahili, right? French, Japanese, all these different cultures around the world, right? Can come together and join what is already a multicultural bridge to begin with, right? Because I think it's easier for one of these other cultures, whether in Africa, Asia, Oceania, to bridge to join to a bridge which is already multicultural and multilingual to begin with, right? And um, versus, oh, this is an American party. Well, I guess I'll just kind of have to try to do the American thing, right? No,
Mhm.
this is a multicultural, multilingual party. And it also, I don't know about you, Jimena, Christopher, Marco, who were here earlier, when we were speaking both languages, doesn't it make the world suddenly feel smaller, like more connected, like closer? Did you have that experience, Jimena? You see, we're coming together. And this, like everything we do here, is a long-term project. We're not going to, just get it right overnight. But tonight was really, really special.
Mm.
And Jimena, having you here and the way you communicate and with your beautiful feminine self, your beautiful feminine nature, just really creates a warmth and a welcoming and good feeling. Thank you, Jimena, for your beautiful heart and your healing nature, your loving, mothering nature. And you're
Thank you.
mothering the two puppies, Botticelli and his hermano. Hey, Uncle Frank. Welcome back, Uncle Frank. It's hard to stay away from El Puente. Anyway, we're just recording now, doing a little kind of recap on the earlier portion when we were speaking lots of Spanish and just how wonderful it is to create this bridge and for all of us to connect. All right.
Okay, I don't know how long I'll stay on because I'm going to quit pretty soon.
No problem, Uncle Frank. I'm just glad you're here.
Okay, great.
And actually, while you're here, Uncle Frank, I remember my grandmother, Uncle Frank's mother, Josefina, who was Spanish and but also perfectly bilingual. I remember she wrote a column, and I think there was something about a bridge in that, if I'm not mistaken, like a bridge between. Do you remember that, Uncle Frank? Do you remember that column that she wrote?
Well, yes, the one it was teaching travelers Spanish was part of it, but I don't remember. I might have a copy of some of them someplace, but I don't remember that much detail about the bridge.
I think there was something about a bridge there, like a bridge between the languages, the cultures. Anyway, it's just a vague recollection. But Uncle Frank's mother, my grandmother, was very well read, very well studied, and just very, very bright. And she really bridged both cultures very well. So we're just reflecting on how magic it is and how beautiful it is to bring these cultures together, right? And it feels to me, the word we use in Spanish is acoge, right? The Latin American culture is here to acoger, to give us all a big warm hug and a safe, warm, loving, compassionate place to be and connect and feel at home.
Embrace.
Right? Yeah.
Embrace.
Embrace. Thank you, Jimena. Yeah. So I'm super excited about El Puente every Friday night, and we're just getting lots of positive feedback on it. And the thing is, by bringing so many different countries and cultures together, again, that have this common foundation, all the Spanish speaking countries have a very strong common link and common foundation, and yet at the same time, being north south, spanning two continents, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere, we span so many different climates and geographies. And so it's really giving us a unique perspective on a huge chunk of the world, basically half the planet, if we consider this as a hemisphere, right? And I think we can create a model here that perhaps later can be expanded to or have a separate parallel European African connection, right?
Mm.
And another spanning, East Asia, South Asia, et cetera, et cetera. and create models, because these are bands of time zones. Like it works for us because we're all, within maybe 5 different time zones. So, relatively tight out of the 24, right? That's why we start at 5 in the afternoon, because even when Brazil is in out of sync with us, the furthest away Brazil gets, I think, is 5 hours, right, from the West Coast. 5 hours, that's doable. We start here at 5 in the afternoon. It's 10 o'clock at night in Brazil, but on a Friday night, hey, you party until 2, 3 in the morning. So, there's a lot of overlap. So there's room here for us all to come together and create a model for the world of bridging. And I've also commented that, we're coming out of 4 years of relative darkness, right? Of so much misunderstanding and division and building a wall between the United States and Mexico, and just such horrible rhetoric and treatment of our Latin American neighbors, that I think it is time for a bridge for healing between and across the cultures, the countries.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are recording. I'd love to pass the talking feather around. So love to hear from everyone. Yeah, David.
It's another piece of that in terms of the bridging. I've been studying African rhythms for about 25 years now with the same teacher, who's from Nigeria. He's from the Yoruba tribe, one of the 2 major tribes in Nigeria. And he's also an Ifa priest, IFA. Now, Ifa is the spiritual tradition of the Yoruba people. And when the Yorubas became slaves and were shipped to the Caribbean, this faith they call Ifa mixed with Catholicism and became Santeria. So, what we call Santeria is really a mixture of Catholicism and Ifa. So there's already a bridging of the cultures there. Besides the place of north-south, there's also an east-west connection there. Africa to Latin-speaking countries where the slaves were mainly, in that place.
No, totally. And that reminds me, when I was in 1986, after my first semester in college, my Uncle Frank, drove me down. We took a trip down from the Bay Area, where I was living and going to college, down to the Southwest, where Uncle Frank lives. And he took me all the way down to the border, because I was then beginning a whole trek across Mexico down to Central America. And I went down to visit some friends of mine in Honduras, and they took me out to the coast, to the Caribbean coast, where there were villages where they still spoke a language that was mostly African, right? With that had mixed in a bit with the English, but it was still mostly African. It was a whole different language and culture. And it was like, wow, it was like an African village.
Wow.
There on the Caribbean coast of Honduras. So yeah, it's a really good point there, David. And we just have such a mix. In fact, the Americas are just kind of this really amazing melting pot and collage of cultures. I mentioned the San Francisco Bay Area, where I'm from and where you live very near to. You're essentially a part of the extended Northern California Bay Area, David. Where I grew up, we had all the peoples of the world. I grew up in the East Bay, very near UC Berkeley. And of course, we had students and families from all over the world. And growing up in the Bay Area, I literally had no concept of racism. My best friend was Black. Trevor lived right down the street. We played baseball together. We did everything together. I had to move to Seattle, Washington. When I moved to live with my mother for a few years, I had to move to, it was in Seattle, Washington, that I learned about racism. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, Seattle is not known to be a particularly racist city, but we had busing in Seattle. And so we had people from way different parts of town coming together in the public school system. And it was like, whoa, you know,
Mhm.
where have I landed? Because see, in the East Bay, everything was just so integrated. Well, I grew up admittedly in a pretty privileged part of the East Bay, just north of Berkeley. There's a small town called Albany. It's a quiet little town on the bay, spans from the bay to the hills, and it borders and mixes with North Berkeley and all that. So it was a privileged, nice suburban, very
Mm.
integrated place to grow up. It's one of the few places I know that's really integrated. Um, but I feel like we have this opportunity here with El Puente to bring the different peoples, not just of the Americas, but of the world together and build these bridges and help us see that, number one, we're not so different. And number two, we all share the same Mother Earth, who now seems much smaller to us as we come together.
Mm.
I need to have a break. Be right back, okay?
Take your time, Jimena. You've earned as much of a break as you need, sister.
So how is the extended city going?
So it's called the Intentional City in the Clouds.
Well,
And yeah, and so, you know, we all know about intentional communities. We're creating an intentional city. And the idea is that the intentional city span and provide a home to as many intentional communities as want to join. Think Los Angeles, where you lived for many, many years, David. Think New York City, right, with all the different neighborhoods and whatnot.
Mhm.
Except the intentional city in the clouds is really, it's made up of intentional communities, change-making communities, transformational communities,
Right.
is the idea, and create, you know, essentially a San Francisco Bay Area in the clouds where all these different change-making communities, you know, a 1960s, 1970s style, really transformational metropolis in the clouds where we can come together. And number one of the first things we're taking on is, how do we get humanity to unite, to come together, right? And we've been co-creating a new game to be sort of an opposite of the game Monopoly, right? Of individual hoarding, first for individual survival, and then individual aggrandizement at the expense of the rest of humanity and at the expense of Mother Earth. The opposite of that is a game with the same spelling, except the first two letters are reversed. Instead of M-O, Napoli, O-M, Omnopoly, as in omnipoly. So instead of one person or one entity or one organization ruling and controlling and dominating everything, it's all of us
Mm.
collectively owning and forming the body politic, omnopoly, all together for the good of the whole, with a strong nod towards the community that you gentlemen, David and Tony, participate in so much, and that's contributed so much, right? Omnopoly. And in the game Omnopoly, the board, rather than being square, is actually circular and spiral. And in the circle, I've got some nice images for this. The circle, think of like a Jacques fresco kind of futuristic, you know, circular city with public transport and different sectors and all that, and then a big hub in the center, kind of like Oroville in India. But the different, you know, slices of the pie, if you will, spanning the different major topic groupings. And so here's kind of a flow that we've envisioned, starting with human needs, the needs of humans, you know, from food, water, shelter, healthcare, etc., to needs of a community of humans, to the needs of humanity as a whole. So the first three slices: human needs, community needs, needs of humanity as a whole. Humanity needs to come together right now. We need to come together and recognize that it's all for one and one for all, altogether, a whole new paradigm. Then, from the needs of humanity as a whole, the fourth section right next to it is the needs of all other species as species. And then from there, we extend from species to ecosystems. And from the needs of ecosystems to the needs of Mother Earth as a whole. You know, her hydrologic cycles, carbon cycles, et cetera, heat balance, which is way out of balance right now, ice, et cetera, to beyond this world, right? Spirituality and the cosmos, right? So there we've covered 7 sections of the pie, and then there's 2 more that just in this one particular formulation, we can create any number of formulations, but I'm kind of trying to boil it down to its logical, like sections of an orange, right? So from those 7, the next section we've envisioned is one that's about goals and strategies. Where do we want to get to? In which set of milestones, and what's the strategy? What's the big picture strategy to get us there, right? And then from there, breaking it down to individual solutions, planning, detailed planning, and implementation. And it's all iterative. So now think of this spiral board with all these sections, and each section has 3 phases, phase 1, 2, 3, kind of mapping to the human psyche of every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? The game of omnopoly is we go to each of these sections within a slice of pie. So out of these 9 sections with 3 phases each, 1, 2, 3, beginning, middle, end, that's 3 times 9, 27. So think of like 27 spots on the board, sections of the board. The idea is that we collectively develop each one, not for individual ownership and rent seeking and hoarding, but for development to be part of the whole, for the good of the whole, right? And then in the very center of the whole, the hub, we could think of that as both a place and a topic of synthesis to tell not only a new story for humanity, but a new story for Mother Earth, including humanity, right? With humanity as homo ahimsa, as Silas says, you know, the caretaker species. And in the center, in the hub, in this integrating story, integrating all the pieces from human needs, community needs, needs of humanity, needs of all species, needs of all ecosystems, needs of Mother Earth as a whole, beyond this world, spirituality and the cosmos, goals and strategies, solutions, plans, and implementation, all integrated into one story that covers who we are, where we came from, how did we get here? How did we get to this moment of crisis? And where do we go from here? Where are we going? And how are we going to get there? So that's the game of omnopoly overlaid on top of an intentional city, which is laid out in these different major topical sections. And again, each one broken into 3 phases, beginning, middle, end, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
And how do we?
Also, that the shift of that that word besides omni, he also omnopoly, om.
Omnopoly, I like it.
Mm.
Omnopoly.
Yeah. And by the way, that place of om, sometimes in Sanskrit they change it to aum, A-U-M. If you take the way your mouth goes and just making a sound, it's like your mouth does it automatically. Starts out with A, then it starts with ooh. It's there naturally.
Wow, love it. Love it.
And in its simplest form, the word means a great mystery.
Yep. Yep. And very often, many of the Plains people, when they spoke to the place that was beyond the Great Spirit, they had no word for it, and ultimately it was God that they called it great mystery.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, so what we're doing is we're now basically the focus of most of the meetings that I participate in now during the week. My big days of multi-hour meetings for me personally are Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Today, Friday. And Tuesday, Thursday, we're meeting from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And then Friday, of course, we have the 24-hour block party. And so within that, ICIC, and Omnopoly are the main topics for Tuesday, Thursday, and then Friday from 10 to 2, all Pacific time. And now Tuesday, we focus on the architecture of ICIC and the game Omnopoly. Thursday is a period of welcoming, a day of welcoming and listening to whoever wants to come in and, meet us, and we listen to them. We give them the gift of our listening so they can be known and heard. And that's the main focus. And then, of course, beyond that, we keep building and keep designing and envisioning and prototyping and experimenting. And then today, Friday, we've been focusing, and this is all just within the last 2.5 weeks, that this whole idea of an intentional city in the clouds, ICIC, has even emerged. So this is all very young and moving quickly. So Friday, it's a day of writing and outreach, writing, like letters of invitation, introduction, and reaching out to the world to come and play with us, be a part of the intentional city in the clouds. And then Friday night, the El Puente, the bridge, it's not just a bridge between cultures and countries and languages here on Earth, but it's also a bridge to ICIC, a bridge to the intentional city in the clouds, right? So that's kind of the weekly architecture, the weekly map, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. Everyone's welcome to all those meetings or to any portions thereof. And so we're just getting into a nice weekly cycle of developing and evolving all this. And Ananda is doing an amazing job of leading all this. And I just love that we have such an inspired and just grounded and brilliant matriarch leading the whole thing. I think that it's just time for that. And just like Jimena is doing such a wonderful job leading, we're really leading this together, El Puente, but that's kind of a nice thing. It's like a bridge between also the male and the female. Wow, so exciting. Your yawn is contagious.
Yeah, it's catching up. I'm afraid I'm done, but it's really nice hanging out with you folks. I'm looking forward to the next time.
Likewise, Tony, and thank.
Really, yeah, it's like, wait a minute.
And thank you, Tony, for the music and the chanting. Beautiful.
Oh, there we go. Ah.
My pleasure. Glad you enjoyed it. I'll leave you with a hearty Om Chakalaka. Sly Stone, right? Do 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 do. Om Chakalaka laka. Om Chakalaka laka. Om Chakalaka. Bye.
Yeah.
All right, Tony. Great to see you, Tony. Have a great night.
I'm gonna sign off too, guys.
All right, David. Great to see you. Thanks for swinging by. See you soon.
And Jamin, I think
Yes,
I'm
Uncle
gonna have to bow out too. It's getting a
All
little
righty.
late for me.
Yeah, I gotcha. Hey,
All right,
great.
so-
Thanks for being here, everyone. Uncle Frank, thanks so much for being here.
All right, good night, everyone.
Have a
Night.
great night, Uncle Frank. See you soon. All righty. Well, I think I'll pause recording just to give us a break from the camera for a bit.